heart pounding against her chest. Sarah Winters stared up at the shadowy figure looming over her wheelchair. Rain poured down around them in the empty parking garage, her desperate words hanging in the air between them. "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." But what happened next would change both their lives forever, in ways neither could have imagined. Hey viewers, if you're already feeling that emotional pull, this story might just break your heart before putting it back together again. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances, and subscribe to see more stories that remind us how humanity shines brightest in our darkest moments. Sarah Winters hadn't always been in a wheelchair. 3 years ago, she was sprinting through life as the rising star CEO of Meridian Technologies, a company she'd built from the ground up. At 34, she had conquered the male-dominated tech industry with a revolutionary accessibility software that was changing lives across the globe. Her corner office overlooked the San Francisco skyline, a daily reminder of how far she'd climbed. But life has a way of humbling even the strongest among us. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday evening much like this one. Sarah had been working late, as usual, finalizing a presentation for investors. The roads were slick, visibility poor. She never saw the truck that ran the red light until it was too late. When she woke up in the hospital a week later, the doctors delivered the crushing news. Her spinal cord had been severely damaged. She might never walk again. The rehabilitation process was brutal, physically and emotionally. Sarah, who had once commanded boardrooms with her confident stride, now struggled to navigate the simplest daily tasks. Her fiancé couldn't handle the pressure and left 6 months after the accident. Many of her so-called friends gradually disappeared from her life. But Sarah was nothing if not resilient. She learned to adapt, returned to her position as CEO, and continued to lead Meridian Technologies, now with an even deeper understanding of why their accessibility software mattered. Tonight, however, all her hard-earned strength seemed to desert her. After working late again, old habits die hard. She'd found herself alone in the parking garage when her specialized van wouldn't start. As she was calling for assistance, the lights suddenly went out, plunging the garage into darkness. Then she heard the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. That's when she saw him, a tall figure moving through the shadows toward her. Panic seized her chest as she frantically tried to maneuver her wheelchair backward, but one of the wheels caught on a concrete barrier. "Please," she begged, hating the tremor in her voice but unable to control it. "Don't hurt me. I can't walk." The figure stepped into a patch of dim light filtering in from outside, revealing a man with tired eyes and rain-soaked clothes clutching something in his arms. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly. "My daughter needs help." In his arms was a small girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, pale and shivering. "My car broke down blocks away," he explained hurriedly. "Your building was the only one with lights still on. She has asthma, and I forgot her inhaler at home. She can't breathe properly." Sarah's fear instantly transformed into concern. The little girl's wheezing was audible now, her small chest rising and falling with worrying rapidity. "I have an inhaler in my office," Sarah said, already turning her wheelchair toward the elevators. "Follow me." That night marked the beginning of an unexpected connection between 3 broken people searching for wholeness. The man's name was Ethan Parker, a single father struggling to raise his daughter Emma after his wife died of cancer 2 years ago. He worked as a high school science teacher by day and drove for a rideshare company at night to make ends meet. Emma had inherited her mother's asthma, which often flared up unexpectedly and left Ethan constantly on edge. After Emma's breathing stabilized in Sarah's office, Ethan insisted on helping Sarah with her van. It turned out he had a knack for mechanics, a hobby from his college days. While he worked, Emma sat beside Sarah, curious about her wheelchair. "Why can't you walk?" the little girl asked with the direct innocence only children possess. "Emma," Ethan admonished from beneath the hood of the van. "We don't ask questions like that." But Sarah smiled. "It's okay. I was in an accident, Emma. My legs don't work the way yours do anymore." Emma considered this seriously. "My mommy doesn't work anymore either. She's in heaven. Daddy says she watches over us, though." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I'm sure she does. Does it make you sad, not being able to walk?" Sarah paused, surprised by the child's perception. "Sometimes. But I've learned to do things differently now. Like how I have to breathe differently when my chest gets tight." "Something like that, yes." After Ethan fixed the van, Sarah insisted on treating them to a late dinner at an all-night diner across the street. Over pancakes and coffee, hot chocolate for Emma, they talked for hours. There was an ease to their conversation that Sarah hadn't experienced in years. No pity in Ethan's eyes when he looked at her wheelchair, just genuine interest in what she had to say. As they were leaving, Emma asked if they could see Sarah again. Before Ethan could intervene, Sarah found herself agreeing and exchanging numbers. What began as occasional coffee meetups soon evolved into regular dinners. Sarah helped Emma with her reading, delighted by the child's quick mind. Ethan started assisting Sarah with home repairs she'd been putting off since the accident. They formed an unlikely friendship built on mutual respect and shared vulnerability. But Sarah kept her guard up. Her world had crumbled once before, and she wasn't eager to let anyone close enough to hurt her again. Besides, she told herself, Ethan was just being kind. A handsome, caring single father would never be interested in a woman bound to a wheelchair. Ethan, meanwhile, was fighting his own battles. The guilt of finding happiness after Amy's death weighed heavily on him. Sometimes he caught himself staring at Sarah, admiring her determination, her sharp intelligence, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed at Emma's jokes, and immediately felt like he was betraying his late wife's memory. Their fragile equilibrium shifted one evening when Sarah invited them to her company's annual gala. Meridian Technologies was unveiling a groundbreaking new program for children with learning disabilities, and Emma had actually helped test some of the early prototypes during their visits to Sarah's office. Sarah rarely attended social functions anymore, tired of the awkward stares and forced conversations, but having Ethan and Emma beside her gave her confidence. The night was going wonderfully until Sarah overheard a conversation between two board members. "I still think she should consider stepping down," one man muttered. "The company needs someone who can keep up with the demands physically. She's just not the same force she used to be," the other agreed. "The investors are getting nervous." Sarah felt as though she'd been doused with ice water. She excused herself and wheeled quickly toward the restrooms, fighting back tears. She thought she'd proven herself 1,000 times over since returning to work, but apparently it wasn't enough. In her haste, she didn't notice Ethan had followed her until he knelt beside her wheelchair in the empty hallway. "They're wrong, you know," he said quietly. "I've never met anyone stronger than you." "You don't understand," Sarah whispered. "I've worked so hard to show them I'm still capable, but they'll never see past this wheelchair." "Then they're fools," Ethan replied, his voice suddenly fierce. "Because I see you, Sarah. Not the wheelchair you. The brilliant, stubborn, compassionate woman who helped a terrified father and his asthmatic daughter in a dark parking garage. The woman who taught Emma it's okay to be different, that limitations don't define you." He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "The woman I've fallen in love with." Sarah stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "Ethan, you can't." "I can," he interrupted. "And I do. I know you think I'm just being nice, or that I feel sorry for you. But the truth is, meeting you that night changed everything for me and Emma. You made us believe in possibilities again." Before Sarah could respond, the sounds of commotion echoed from the main hall. They rushed back to find Emma in the middle of the stage, having somehow gotten hold of the microphone during the presentations. "Hi, everyone," the little girl said, her voice echoing through the ballroom. "I'm Emma. I wanted to tell you about Miss Sarah. She's the bravest person I know. My daddy says bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing important stuff even when you are scared. Ms. Sarah does important stuff every day." The room fell silent as Emma continued, her childish wisdom cutting through the pretense of the corporate event. "She made the computer games that helped me read better at school. And she showed me that different isn't bad, it's just different. My mommy's gone and Ms. Sarah can't walk, but we're still okay." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as Ethan squeezed her shoulder. Emma's impromptu speech earned a standing ovation and changed the energy of the entire event. Later, several board members approached Sarah to apologize and express their continued faith in her leadership. But more importantly, it forced Sarah to confront the walls she'd built around her heart. In the months that followed, Sarah allowed herself to open up to the possibility of love again. It wasn't easy. Vulnerability never is, especially for someone who had learned to be fiercely independent out of necessity. There were arguments and misunderstandings, moments when Sarah pushed Ethan away because she was afraid of becoming a burden. "I don't want your pity," she snapped during one particularly heated discussion. I don't need someone to take care of me. Has it ever occurred to you? Ethan responded calmly. That maybe I need someone to take care of me too? That Emma and I were just as broken as you think you are? That maybe healing happens when broken people find each other and create something whole. Slowly, they learned to navigate the complex terrain of their relationship. Sarah started therapy to address the trauma and grief she'd never fully processed after her accident. Ethan joined a support group for widowers, finally allowing himself to mourn Amy properly while making space in his heart for new love. Emma thrived with Sarah in her life, her confidence growing as she watched the woman she admired refuse to be limited by circumstances. When Sarah's company launched their new educational software, Emma proudly told everyone at school that her almost mom had made it especially for kids like her. A year after they met, Ethan proposed on a beach at sunset. He'd arranged for a special all-terrain wheelchair that could navigate the sand, determined that Sarah shouldn't miss experiencing such moments because of accessibility issues. I'm not asking you to marry me despite your disability, he told her as Emma watched excitedly from a few feet away, trusted with holding the ring box until the perfect moment. I'm asking because the woman you became because of everything you faced is exactly who I want to spend my life with. Their wedding was small but joyful. Sarah wore a dress specially designed to work with her wheelchair, but halfway through the ceremony, she surprised everyone by asking Ethan and her physical therapist to help her stand for their vows. She had been working in secret for months, regaining enough strength to stand briefly with support. There wasn't a dry eye in the place as she rose to meet her husband's gaze. I may not walk again, she told him, their faces level for the first time. But you taught me I can still rise. 2 years later, Sarah's company had expanded its accessibility technology to international markets, changing countless lives. The board that once questioned her capability now celebrated her vision. Ethan had become head of the science department at his school, implementing programs that made science accessible to students with various disabilities. They adopted a second child, a boy with cerebral palsy who had been passed over by many potential parents intimidated by his needs. In their home, difference wasn't feared but embraced as simply another way of experiencing the world. On rainy nights, Sarah sometimes thought back to that moment in the parking garage, her fear, her plea not to be hurt, never imagining that the man standing before her would be the one to help her heal her deepest wounds. Please don't hurt me, she had begged. And he hadn't. Instead, he had shown her that even broken paths can lead to beautiful destinations. If there's one thing to take from Sarah and Ethan's story, it's that our perceived weaknesses often become the foundation for our greatest strengths. Sometimes the people we think might hurt us are actually the ones who will help us stand, whether literally or figuratively. And sometimes, the most profound changes begin in the darkest moments, when we're most afraid and vulnerable. For Sarah, the wheelchair that she thought limited her actually expanded her vision, helping her create technology that liberated thousands. For Ethan, the grief he carried became the capacity to love with greater depth and appreciation. For Emma, early experiences with loss and illness cultivated an empathy beyond her years. We all face our parking garage moments, times when we feel trapped, afraid, and unable to see a way forward. But perhaps, just beyond the shadows, someone is coming not to hurt us, but to help us find a new path we never imagined possible. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If it touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the extraordinary connections that can emerge from life's most challenging moments. Remember, it's often in our most vulnerable times that we find our greatest strength, and sometimes unexpected love.